behalf of Namita Gokhale, William Dalrymple, and all my colleagues at Teamwork Arts, welcome back to JLF's Brave New World, new season, season 3. Our magazine partner for this series is The Week, Journalism with a Human Touch. Our session today, Rebellious Lord, Lord Meghnad Desai in conversation with John Elliott. Lord Desai's latest offering, Rebellious Lord, is an autobiography that is a personal account of a distinguished public man. The journey of his life has been extraordinary by all standards. His unorthodox approach to world economics led to his forming centers of study at the London School of Economics, where he is the Emeritus Professor of Economics and helped to create the Human Development Index, now widely used to quantify development in emerging societies around the world. He entered the British House of Lords in 1991. He has written over 30 books on economics, history, politics, cinema, and his recent publication, Rebellious Lord. He's also written Anamika, a tale of desire set in times of war. In conversation with John Elliott, he discusses his long-awaited autobiography. John Elliott is an author and foreign correspondent, initially with the Financial Times. A new updated edition of his prize-winning book, Implosion, India's Tryst with Reality, reviewing the Narendra Modi years, has recently been republished. He writes a blog on South Asia current affairs called Riding the Elephant that also appears on the website of Asia Sentinel in Hong Kong. To remember that all our sessions that have been broadcast till now are available on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest, and on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF, including those from the recently concluded JLF North America editions of Boulder, Houston, Toronto, and New York. Please do remember to ask questions and comment by typing it into the comment section, and we will send these on to John and Lord Desai. Not sure whether they will choose to answer them, or we will do our best to get the questions to them. Ladies and gentlemen, Rebellious Lord, Meghnad Desai in conversation with John Elliott. John Elliott, Lord Desai, over to you both.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjoy, and thank you for setting up this session. It's a pleasure to be on a JLF platform again, albeit virtual, with Meghnad Desai. The last time was at the JLF British Library when your book, Rise on a Hill, had just come out, Meghnad. And of course, we were both on a rather more stormy Kashmir session elsewhere in London about a year ago. We've got three main things to discuss. Two of them were mentioned by Sanjoy in his introduction. During our 35 minutes before we open it up to the audience, there's the autobiography of Rebellious Lord, and we'll get round to the rebel bit of that. There's your novel Anamika, which you told me is so full of sex and violence that it may not be suitable for much analysis on such a discrete platform as this. And then there's your resignation from the Labour Party after 50 years, which has rather conveniently come out at the same time as the two books. In Rebellious Lord, you tell us about a global life spanning India and the UK, and also the US during formative years, and many periods in other countries doing academic work as well, spanning economics, politics, a long association with the theatre, acting, directing, author of a book on a film star, and a political journey from rightist tendencies, which you acknowledge in India, leftwards via Marxist economics and onto the Labour Party. And you list the family, the LSE and the Labour Party as the primary anchors, the primary things in your life. And later you become Labour's first Asian peer. Looking back, what's the common link, the thread, the path through that amazing spread of a life?
Thank you, John. Can I, before I start and answer your question, say that this is today the birthday of Dilip Kumar, on whom I wrote one of my favorite books. And Dilip Kumar is, I think, 98 today. So we ought to acknowledge the great man's birthday. And he also was very influential in my second marriage and my love with Kishore. So I think I owe a lot to Dilip Kumar. Now, what is the common thread? I think a desire for more knowledge and a restlessness for arguments and experience, and a tendency not to obey orders. Sort of, take risks, defy advice to how to conduct my life, and somehow not fall flat on my face. Be just lucky enough to get by. And I think this is hard work.
And rebellious?
Rebellious, I think I always, I cite a thing of my father's behavior in my book when he makes a adverse remark on a file in his bureaucratic life, and the king, the Gaikwad, says he should remove this because this is offensive, and my father refuses, and he gets fined 2 rupees per month, which is a lot of money in those days, and the king finally has to give up. He said, okay, he's like that. He's not going to relent. I kind of, I think I inherit that sort of cussedness. Let's put it that way, or bloody-mindedness.
Yes. I thought the word rebel could be varied, but you can't call a book Cussed Lord, I guess.
Exactly. Let others say that.
I found the first chapter of you growing up in Baroda fascinating, with the large family, the extended relations, all milling around. They even come to you one day when you've done some exams at lunchtime, I think, and make you tell them the answers that you put in your exam paper. Then they tell you what you should have said. That's quite a family.
Indeed. Absolutely overeducated and very argumentative. And always conversation, lots and lots and lots of conversation about all sorts of things.
Yeah, you describe them as a highly, you describe them as a highly literate and argumentative family.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember at the age of 13, my uncles and my father arguing very, very loudly, and the neighbors wondering, was it a quarrel about family property? It was a quarrel about Sheikh Abdullah being put under prison by Nehru without trial. And it was like the world had come to an end. There I was, 13-year-old, saying, wow, I must read up who Sheikh Abdullah is. And so I did. I did, yes. Of course I
and his son and his grandson. You drill down to give us your family's 6 village-based, and I'm going to pronounce this wrongly, Grihastha Nagar branch of the Brahmins. Very precise. Yes. Just 6 villages? For the international part of our audience, the idea you can drill down.
These, I'm a Vadanagar Nagar Brahmin, Grihastha. Now, Vadanagar, is somewhere there, and they must all, one branch must have come out of that. Heaven alone knows. I've never been there. But, one had to get, as it were, it is like a library classification. You had to get all the digits right. It was 31.3250. The more digits you have, the more special you are. Anybody can be.
And your part of the Brahmins was more superior to the others, because the others got paid for what they did, whereas you're
absolutely, yes, absolutely. We were not just by our own account, but every account, the highest kind of Brahmins you could be in Gujarat.
And then your family was slightly privileged, and given the times, you had Life with Brook Bond Tea, Gillette razor blades, and the Times of India daily.
That was my father spending things on what he wanted, not necessarily that we were rich and could afford it, but to get the Times of India. And to get the Times of India, the only house beside the palace to get the Times of India in Baroda was a privilege. I only gathered that many years later when my old brother told me. But this was my father. He was like that. He wanted to read only the Times of India.
And then his job in the government service, he went on doing paperwork for the police commissioner. So you got a policeman cook, a policeman to do the chores, a rare telephone, and free entry to the local cinema. What a marvelous way to grow up.
Absolutely. It was a real luxury. I mean, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I had a standard of life which I've never regained.
I don't believe that. But did you keep a diary? Because every page of this book is packed with names and conversations and
it's
occasions.
all, it's
I mean,
all,
the detail.
It's all the memory. It's all memory, and it
When
was
did you
written
start?
at a single sort of way without any revisions.
How long did it take?
Not very long. I write quite fast.
I mean, a year
Uh,
or?
no, about 2 months, 2 to 3 months.
And all
No,
this,
yeah, it's
all this
all
detail was
here
in your head,
absolutely in my head. Yeah,
and every
never
name.
had to look up a single.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, the publishers are too mean to have given us an index, or I would have spent a few minutes adding up how many names there were in the index. I mean, it's hundreds.
Well, that is very fatal in UK, because if you have a political sort of reputation, your friends first of all look at the index to see whether they are mentioned in it or not. If they're not, they don't buy it. This way, they'll have to buy it and read it, and then maybe sell it to a second-hand bookshop. But no, it is all out of my memory, and it's very good memory at that.
Yeah, well, I saw a former senior Conservative cabinet minister in the local bookshop just before the shutdown, and he had a new book which had just come out on current affairs, and he was going through the index and then looking at the pages. So he was, and he didn't buy the book. I stood back. He knows me, so I stood well in the background and watched this, and eventually he walked away without buying the book.
There you are.
There you are.
If you are writing a book on British politics, mention all of them.
And you too.
And me too, yes.
There's a love of theatre running right the way through the book, from stage lighting to writing plays, acting in them. The book, as you said, on Dilip Kumar. Where did that all come from?
Well, that I don't know where that came from, but I get sort of self-regard more than that. But I somehow wanted to. When I was in school, I staged this thing from a novel, chapter of a novel. I just took over, and somehow I must have had it in me. I wanted to direct a play, I wanted to create something, and from then on, see what the thing was. I was the youngest in every group in school and college I have been through, and so I somehow got more hearing, partly because I was the youngest, and they all also thought I was terribly bookish. So I had read books they had not read, so I was slightly intimidating from that point of view, especially to my professors.
I was going to come on to that in a moment, but you start off doing some stage lighting, and the last minute dramas of that day, when everything appeared to be going wrong, you said taught you to think of every current crisis from the point of view of the future, when the triviality of the crisis would become clear. I wonder what Narendra Modi and Boris Johnson would be saying about that this week, with their farmers and their European problems. But without getting into all that, that was just a side remark. Do you still think that about crises? That if you look at tomorrow, then it'll.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a very helpful habit to have acquired. It really has helped me, because in the middle of sort of the political crisis, whatever it was. You see, when I went abroad at 21, I had a very un-Indian life, because in India, wherever you are, there are helpful uncles and aunts, and you can always run to. They'll solve your problems, and I had to solve all my own problems. And that habit of looking at today from tomorrow's angle has been very, very helpful. So in the middle of the worst crisis, I can be very calm and say, okay, this is going on, but tomorrow is another day.
I've always taken the one about crisis being an opportunity, which I think is a Chinese origin. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, indeed. No, it's a crisis from tomorrow's angle is not a crisis, which is a nice. So you can be very calm in the middle of this, and you can take it all in. And of course, people don't know you are calm. So so they are more agitated than you are. So it's a great advantage.
Going back to what you were saying about you being young academically, you didn't do well, as you admit to begin with. You didn't get the high grades and the first that your family thought you should have got. But then you did an MA age 20, which is amazing in Bombay, as it then was. And then in Pennsylvania, you did a PhD, dissertations, and 12 courses in a record 21 months.
Yes. Again, lucky. In a sense, one of the things about my going abroad and doing this, especially because I went there without any mathematics, I suddenly saw that here is an opportunity to learn something very difficult, very new, but being taught by a master of the subject. So neglect the standard subjects. Don't worry about grades in that. I had to get B+ or better. I said, okay, I don't really want about A and so on. What I'm learning is much more important than grades. So that, and as I recount, is surprised because even my supervisor, when he taught me a course, he thought I would challenge the B grade he had given me. I said, thank you very much. I got other things to do. So
that's
that kind of. Sorry? So that kind of, I guess, obtuseness or, willingness to take a different path was very helpful. And especially when I was on my own, I had to do something. In India, I was too given to not giving the standard answer. In India, you have to give the standard answer to a question. Otherwise, they don't want to listen to you. And so, if you don't give that, they don't grade you. Whereas in America, they actually appreciated that I gave an answer out of the standard box, and they thought that's interesting. Where did you read that? And that was the way I was rewarded. And I wish in India more people would learn from the example I gave you and encourage students with slightly awkward kind of mental equipment or originality.
I was going to say that focusing on learning rather than grades is rather un-Indian, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't wish I was un-Indian, but I was certainly not.
No. But I
was not typical. I was not typical.
No, I meant the idea that you were focusing on learning was not what you'd have got back in India.
Indeed.
Around that time, you admit to being glad. I'm moving on to politics. Being glad a conservative government was elected in the UK, and in India, you noted that you were drifting to the right and didn't entirely dismiss the Jan Sangh, and you went to the founding in 1959 of Jai Prakash Narayan's party.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I was following the British news and what Macmillan was doing. I was reading The Economist every week because it was in our library, and I knew about Macmillan fighting the 1959 election and so on. And so when he won, I remember being very happy that Macmillan had won the election. I probably changed my mind after I got to UK, but that's another matter. But no, it was very much my view that I was, Bombay was not very much a hotbed of socialism or communism in those days, at least Bombay University. So no, yes, I was on the right of the spectrum, and I don't mind saying that because people say, "How can you be saying like that?" And now you're a Trotskyite, and then you're like Modi. How can you be like? I said, I'm me, for God's sake. Where is the consistency? I'm the consistency.
I don't think you were actually ever a Trotskyist, though you were surrounded by them.
No, I was never a Trotskyist. No, I'm surrounded by them. I've never been a Leninist of any kind. I'm also a very peculiar Marxist. I'm a very peculiar Marxist. So anyway.
You were radicalized, I guess, in the US during your time at Pennsylvania and at Berkeley. And you joined picket lines. I'm not sure if this was the first demonstration you ever did, You joined
Yes.
picket lines outside a non-black supermarket.
Yeah, no, that is the supermarket was very near where I lived, and I joined. Although, as I say, I could have been thrown out of the country for breaking the law. But I just decided that there was a demonstration against people not hiring black workers, and I had to join it. I don't know, in a sense, also when Indians are abroad, they never do anything like that. They absolutely stick to what they've
Yes.
come to do. They study, they save a lot of money, and they go back. Or they are married, but when the daughter grows up to dating age, they go back.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
I just had decided this was my country. I was going to live there, and therefore I had to do something about the society there,
That was in America.
America.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then-
but for the Vietnam War, I would have been in America.
Yes, when you left America, I was about to come on to that. You leave America partly to get clear of being drafted into the US Army to fight in Vietnam, which is a laudable thing to try and avoid. And then I guess also laudable, visiting India around the same time, you managed to avoid getting into arranged marriages.
Yes.
So
By that time, I think it's like this. If you haven't grown up with the tribal customs when you were an adolescent, you can't get into it. I had left at 21, and by the time I was 25. I really grew up between 21 and 25 in America. And the attitudes I acquired were very, very much at that time sort of embedded in me.
Yes,
So
yes.
I could adapt to England, but I could not go through an arranged marriage. I just don't know what would I do. What would you talk about?
And then you come to London to the LSE with its grey clutch of buildings opposite the Indian High Commission in Aldwych, which you describe as looking like an urban polytechnic. It's so
Absolutely.
grim compared with the open spaces of American universities.
Indeed, I was very disappointed. I mean, it's got much better lately, but
Yes.
for the most of the time I was there, it was just grim.
Yeah, the recent redevelopment is marvelous. Opening up
Yeah,
that great
recently,
panorama.
absolutely. Yeah. Now, but otherwise it was just, they used to say, LSE is a place where the concrete is never discussed and never dry.
What drove you into LSE politics? I mean, we're now in the mid-60s. You're still in your mid-20s. You become immersed in university politics. The students make you the honorary president of the Students' Union when you're 25, I think. Yeah. It's a time of the LSE shut for a month. You're in there trying to make peace. It's the anti-Vietnam War movement, Enoch Powell's River of Bloods. You were really in the middle of it at that time.
I guess the common element is the student union pub. Seriously, because you would meet students and academics would be in the same place, which would never happen in India, you see. Or even in America, right. I would say it would be difficult. So they were sort of my age. We got to know each other. We've talked and this and that, met over weekends. And so I was much closer to students at LSE when I got there than I would have been in any other surrounding, especially in the Indian surroundings, because in India, the staff was separately from students and so on. And I felt like them. I should really have graduated 5 years later. So I was still like a student,
Yes.
And so that was, and they also took to that because, I was very relaxed in my attitudes and willing to dance, and that there's a dancing picture of me in the book.
Yes, there's quite a few pubs around the LSE. Did you all have your individual ones that different sort of cliques went to?
No. Within the buildings of the LSE, there was a student pub called the 3 Tons.
Oh, inside, because as well as
inside the bottom of the St. Clement's building, and so at 5:30, we would all be there, And I remember a senior professor saying, "You guys would be here if you'd opened at 5 o'clock, aren't you?" We said, "Yes, we'd be here at 5 o'clock if we'd opened at 5 o'clock." No, that's how you spend the evenings.
I've always avoided economics as much as I can, and I didn't realize you could get immersed in such enriching subjects as why milk was more expensive in California than other states, which you did when you were in America. You wanted to do the competitiveness of Californian wines. Again, scarcely an academic subject, but you made it. But moving on quickly, you then, I was amazed to see, studied in depth 3 14th century harvest failures, which were symptoms of overpopulation that had driven cultivation to inferior land and thus a drop of productivity, which I discovered when I Googled it, because I wondered why you were so fascinated, was the Great European Famine.
That's right.
Are all these 600 years ago that famine took place?
No, it was, as I say, it was really the accident of playing cricket. I was playing cricket, and one of my colleagues, who was an economic historian, said, "Oh, here is somebody who's doing medieval economic history. He's got a problem. Can you look at this?" So, doing that, I suddenly get into this, and I thought, intuitively, this can't be right. 3 successive years of famines, and so I just got into it. And my economic history colleagues, they were also somewhat fascinated that I had got into it, and because I was also mathematical at that time. So I just got into it, and it took me a while, but it's a whole different culture of economic historians. They're much more gentlemanly, much more sort of proper people, but very full of all kinds of exotic knowledge. So I really enjoyed that. They're my sidekick, as it were.
Amartya Sen asks you at one point to become the member secretary of a new agricultural price commission in Delhi, but you turned him down, preferring life in London. Must have been rather tempting to get on the inside of government. As a journalist, I found it fascinating when I did it for 3 years. Weren't you interested to get in there and see how it all works?
Well, I think I thought I thought very carefully about that, but I thought I would be much more in a structure.
Oh.
I grew up in a family of civil servants, minor civil servants. So I knew that you become a civil servant, then you really are in a sort of rules and regulations and regularities and so on. And going in the evening to a pub was no longer possible. So I thought, no, I liked my life as it is. I could have been a minister.
Yes.
Think of that.
Could have been finance minister.
I could have been finance minister, yes. Thank God India was saved from that.
And you were saved from the finance ministry. Which leads me on to the obvious question. What was the high spot of your life as an economist? The Human Development Index that you devised with Amartya Sen, or for the UNDP, or one of your books, maybe Testing Marxism, Monetarism? That was a Freudian slip.
Since I'd written a similar book on Marxism sort of thing. No, I think Testing Monetarism was it because, in a sense, it was a battle in standard economics where I had to really take on some authorities. Human development was very, very inventive. It was a great discovery. It was a joint collective discovery, and maybe more famous for me anyway. But the testing monetarism was a political and economic fight against the monetarists. And there were really important things at stake. And quite a lot of British politicians read that book. And they said that that was the only book on economics they had read. Because at that time we were fighting for Keynes against monetarists, and I had sort of a systematic approach to it, very non-political, very academic, but written in a way that people could understand. So it is also a test of my writing ability. And I'm very proud of that. Not that it's been reissued lately, but yes, I think Testing Monetarism is my greatest book.
But the Human Development Index was also important. It's something
absolutely.
we all turn to.
Absolutely. No. The Human Development Index all the way through from 1991, much of the 1990s. I did a lot of work, and it was very, very influential across the world. And we kept on being asked questions and improving it and so on. And I think it changed the whole sort of conversation about development. It is just about, it's completely, and it's still mistakenly called the happiness index. It's not the happiness index, but it is the human development index. And no, I think it is also good to be working with some very, very exciting people, is in a team. And of course, I was just saying, yeah.
We're getting through our time, so I'm going to skip a couple more questions on the economics and move on to the Labour Party. You joined in 1970-71 because you decided you wanted to be involved in politics as well as in economics. And politically, you felt the LSE student stuff, agitation had reached a dead end, and you'd moved leftwards, still a believer in Marxist economics, but you wanted the Labour Party to be a gradual reformer. You saw the Labour Party as being gradually reformist. Social democratic government, best for the UK. Have we got that? Or have we had it in the Labour Party?
I think yes. And the thing about being a social democratic party is when you win, people soon forget what you have won. Things like child benefits, or fight for gender equality in pay. Or Sure Start, which was for children, minimum wage. Everybody remembers the Iraq War under Tony Blair, but nobody remembers the real, I remember reading once that through all the troubles of interwar French politics, the one socialist government was in power introduced 5-day week, paid holidays. And that's not a revolutionary gesture, but it changed people's lives. And I think that way Labour Party has done a lot of things which has actually improved the quality of people's life. And I'm very proud to have been a member of the Labour Party. I absolutely have no reservations. But I was always on the soft left.
Yes.
Because I was never going to be a Leninist.
Which brings us round to the fact that you've just resigned from the Labour Party over the anti-Semitism row that the new Labour leader, Keir Starmer, is trying to end. I can't understand why you've resigned. I know the anti-Semitism thing is vitally important. Keir Starmer is trying to sort it. But surely now is the time when the new leader, Keir Starmer, needs your support. Surely you can't leave. You can't let the anti-Semitism thing drag down the future of the party. Surely.
It was very embarrassing, almost shameful for 5 years.
Yes.
I really was almost like squirming, but I thought, no. It was when Jeremy Corbyn, who's a friend of mine, I've known Jeremy for ages, when he was readmitted to the party after dismissing the anti-Semitism remark.
This was very recently.
Very recently. That's what I designed.
So the National Executive...
After the National Executive Committee readmitted him. He was suspended for a while, then he was readmitted 19 days later.
But Keir Starmer did not give him the whip back, so he's not in the he hasn't got the Labour whip.
No, he's only not for 3 months. But I also said that one thing we knew about Jeremy Corbyn is even when he had a whip, he never obeyed it. So it's the most irrelevant. It's the most irrelevant punishment that I know of to give on Jeremy Corbyn. No, it maybe there are other things. I was very unhappy about the whole Brexit matter. Although I'm a Remainer, I think the country wants to be Brexit. The country should be Brexit. No, I think it was a hasty decision. Maybe I'm being rebellious. But it sounded, I made it very suddenly. I made it within 12 hours. Right. And I was requested by many good people in the Labour Party, why was I doing this and so on. I said, done it, I'm out. I will wait till it really, really achieves to get rid of anti-Semitism. And I've done the previous fight against the hard left. I'm not doing another.
Do you think he can win?
I don't know.
Okay, let's move on to something lighter.
Okay.
Anamika, you learned, you say in your Rebellious Lord book, you learned while you were in Baroda from your co-ed school that girls could be as bright as boys in studies as well as sports. I think actually you meant as bright, as good as in sports, as bright as anyway. But maybe that's why you've got a beautiful, agile and cunning heroine at the start of your Anamika novel, who defangs would-be looters, literally falls for the gang leader, and uses all that to clear her in-laws out of the house. What a clever lady.
Yes. Well, you see,
Tell us about the book. How have you managed to write this?
Yeah, Anamika is something which took me about 6-7 years to write. I mean, not all the time, but off and on. It was really to sort of the proposition is that no one can possess another person without consent. You know, and physical possession is not possession. And I mean, basically, all the women characters in the book are all clever. The men are confused and kind of, but the older men are better, but the younger men are all sort of brave and fighting but confused. And I think it's partly because in my family as well, they're full of very intelligent women in my family. And I wanted to show basically that you could be a clever, beautiful woman, young, but fully in control, be strategically thinking as to, because there she is. She's really on one way helpless because her husband is paraplegic. He can't fight for her. Her in-laws have decided basically that they have to more or less rape her to get their grandchild.
But they had decided to, yes.
I mean, I say that. So there she is. And of course, outside there is anarchy. So the first time she sees this gang leader, as it were, she is the daughter of a prime minister of a native state nearby. So she's been brought up like that, you see. And so I make her especially, that episode about that beetle nut and thing. So I continued on that. Perfectly normal, beautiful woman who deeply loves her husband, but there are more than one ways, and she succeeds. And of course, with the contrast was this other woman in the Zanana, this woman from Georgia, as it were, Abkhazia.
With a crucifix.
With the Christian cross, who basically realizes that everybody around her is stupid and she's the most intelligent woman going. So why does she take advantage of? She should use her mind, not her body. And so I enjoyed writing that, and it was great fun. I mean, it took me some time to get it all right, but no.
It flows beautifully. Tell us about the historical context and also the geography.
Yeah, the historical context is basically after Aurangzeb dies in 1707. For the next 50 years, there is chaos. The next 150 years, there's chaos in Delhi. The Mughal kings come and go. Nobody looking after them. And local states become independent. Local rajas become independent, and there's no longer law and order until sort of early 19th century. The British do. Anyway, so that is called Gardi. That period is called Gardi, anarchy. And so the lack, so when people get murdered and so on, there is no question of who's going to judge.
No.
People are getting, nobody minds a bit. They just move on. Somebody said, okay, get another king.
Where is it?
Geography, it is actually Madhya Pradesh, Chambal. The river is Chambal.
Oh yes,
I
yes.
call it Shreni, but it is Chambal. I mean, I didn't want to be too specific because, someone says, oh, but, at that time so-and-so was king, and how did you describe? I thought, create a middle of North India, not too far from Delhi, sort of surrounding one Muslim kingdom, another Hindu kingdom. And I enjoy inventing the geography. The river and the east and west and north and south.
Yeah, I haven't finished the book yet. I'm about a third of the way through.
You're not finished book. Yeah, it was great fun writing. I have one more novel coming out. Sorry?
Similarly soft porn?
No. This takes place after the end of the Mahabharata war. This is a very, very different book.
Oh, right. Because there's one or two.
But we can't discuss that. That's for the next JLF.
There is some soft porn in this.
Soft? Yes. Well, yes, it is. I love writing about sex. I have a previous novel about a British Prime Minister being murdered, which I wrote 10 years ago, called Just in Time. That also has got sex in it. Why not?
In Downing Street.
Yeah, no. He gets murdered. He gets murdered during the Old Firm game between Celtic and Rangers.
Oh, right. But there should be another.
Poisoned by Martini. It's called Justin. Unfortunately, the publisher went bust. But it is available. HarperCollins published it in India.
Oh, right. So that's
10 years ago. Yeah, it's still available. Yeah.
And is this going to be available outside India? It's come from Root.
I write books. I don't sell books. I take the view that economists, division of labor. If my publisher wants to make money, they should sell it outside India.
Right.
I can't be bothered. I got other books to write.
There's a question up about what you think about the farm laws recently reenacted in India, but I think we can probably skip that unless you really want to deal with it.
No, I get very simple. I have always supported that reform. It was initiated by Manmohan Singh before, because the whole MSP thing is only relevant for large farmers and for wheat and rice. India needs a much more varied agriculture, with a market gardening variety, where we can export goods and so on. We are all still stuck in the Green Revolution, where we created a lot of wheat and rice, wrecked the water table in Punjab. And this is a very privileged group of farmers asking for it. Nothing wrong with privilege, but if you're going to really develop Indian agriculture, we need a different kind of agriculture. And these reforms are for that.
And they've been around for ages. I was writing about them being proposed 20 years ago.
Exactly, absolutely. Both the labor market reforms and the agriculture market reforms. I too have been writing for God knows how many years. But as soon as people say farmers, Indians say, "Oh, poor people struggling."
Yes.
I mean, I once wrote that if a farmer has a debt, it's forgiven. But if a chowkidar has debts, nobody forgives that. Chowkidar may be poorer than a farmer. Say a farmer and people immediately stop thinking rationally. And I think I am surprised that this government has been politically very cack-handed to get into this much trouble. This is where I think you miss Arun Jaitley, and you miss. Had he been around, they wouldn't have been in this. They wouldn't have been.
He'd have put some spin into it, which is what it needed.
No, he would have seen it coming, and he was a good Punjab background, or Sushma Swaraj. It's a Punjab Haryana problem. It's not an Indian problem.
No. Well, there we are. I think I've got a notice that says time out. I'm not sure what happens at the end, whether Sanjoy pops up and says we finished.
Yes,
bangs you on the head. Bangs you on the head.
We finished up with economics after sex, so I thought that was a good balance.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, John Elliott. Thank you, Lord Meghnad Desai. Just a quick question. Lord Desai, what do you think is going to happen post-Brexit? How do you see this?
Well, I was avoiding that.
unraveling.
Oh, we'll manage. No, I think after about 2-3 months, we'll manage. Because look at the vaccine situation. Somehow the scientific ability and regulatory equipment in UK was able to make it the first country to have vaccines available for its people. The vaccine was not invented in UK, Germany, but UK has a vaccine in the queue high up. But the fact that in middle of all this, the regulatory authority was able to approve of a vaccine, and vaccine is already being administered in UK before any other country. That says that in science, manufacturing, culture, and so on, good country. It has not much industry, and it sort of lost a lot of manufacturing, but there's a lot of enterprise and intellectual power here. No, I think the Brits would be all right.
Eventually,
Thank you.
but
On
not
that happy
quickly.
note, the Brits will be all right. There's a lot of enterprise, and certainly in culture and the arts and innovation. This is still a place to go to. Thank you, Lord Desai. Thank you, John. I wish
Thank
we
you,
could have had you here in person, but inshallah, maybe in 2021 or 2022, we will welcome you back to a live program at the Jaipur Literature Festival. Thank you all for watching.
Well,
Please log back on for our next session, What We Carry. Maya Shanbag Lang in conversation with Supriya Dravid, the mother-daughter relationship and one of the most fundamental of relationships. In her book, What We Carry, a memoir, Maya Shanbag Lang examines what happens when we are forced to question the very veracity of what we always assumed to be true. In conversation with Supriya Dravid, and that's at 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 3 p.m. GMT, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you soon.